Yes. I'm Lauren Van Hamer from Beltline to Broadway, and I am here with Libby Parker, and I'm so excited about this conversation. If you're watching and you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. And if you're not comfortable putting them in the chat and you want to reach out to Libby personally, please feel free to DM. I'm going to speak for you, but can people DM you?
Yes, of course, of course. So on Instagram, I'm going to say for this one, I'm going to go with my theater handle. So I'm the Broadway dietitian. All no spaces or underlines or anything.
Yes. So feel free to DM her or reach out. I'll put her website up. So feel free to reach out as a great resource. And so people know we are both part of the Broadway Makers Alliance. That's how we kind of know each other. And so I'm just so happy to have you.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm so excited for this. I was so happy when you asked me to be on this show.
Yes, it's very cool. So I want to talk a little bit about your background because you are a nutritionist, you're a registered dietitian, you're an author, you're an instructor, but your heart is in musical theater, as is mine.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your background. I know you started dancing really young, but you're still involved in theater now. So talk to me a little bit about you.
Yeah. Okay. So theatrical background. I mean, when we say involved now, I mean it's been a year amidst COVID. I haven't taken a dance class since before COVID, so there's that. But anyway, so yes, my mom loved musical theater. She was not a performer herself. She'll be the first to tell you she can't carry a tune. But she grew up just taking dance classes. And so when I was very young, she put me in dance classes, I think from around the age 3. And I have this really great picture at age 1.5 with my first pair of tap shoes on in the living room, and she's teaching me a shuffle step. And so that's something that we bonded over and watching the old MGM musicals. So that's kind of how I got started. And then I saw my first live professional show at age 5 at the Chanhassen Dinner Theater in Minnesota. We saw 42nd Street. And 5 years old, I loved it so much that I begged my mom, can we please go back again? And this is like a 2-hour drive from our house. It's a dinner theater. It's expensive to take a 5-year-old, but she took me.
Oh. Okay.
And that was really, I think, what made me fall in love with musical theater, just the way you can transport the audience. So fast forward many years, just taking your standard, combo dance class, not doing anything else. 6th grade play, we got to do Annie. So I was in Annie, and I was like, ooh, like I can actually like be in shows and sing and dance. And that was fun. And then didn't really get to do it again until high school. And ever since then, been doing community theater and I've been taking voice lessons and everything in the last couple of years. Have been attempting to go out and audition for Broadway, both in LA and New York. Only a couple times, obviously haven't made it yet, but knock on wood, we're going to get there. But I kind of want to back up now too. So my professional background as a dietitian, we're going to get into how all this came about. But when I was, looking at college, this is early 2000s, and my dad came from a very strong science background. He's a PhD. And they were like, yeah, do you really want to pursue performing? Like, you need to get a real job. Everyone out there who's a performer has heard this from someone at some time. Like, you're really going to make it? Are you going to be the special one? So you should do something in science. You're good at science. So I'm like, okay. And I also had no confidence in myself at that time. So went to school. Was I originally going to be a veterinarian? And changed paths to nutrition pretty quickly for multiple reasons. But the main one being what was really the purpose of today's talk is I had been developing my own restrictive eating disorder, unknowns to me. And was super into nutrition. I was reading all the nutrition facts labels on food. I was reading all the articles out there that I could get my hands on about weight loss. And I'm like, hey, there's a job helping people lose weight. Sign me up for this. So switched majors into nutrition. Totally not what I do now, but switched majors into nutrition and went on to get bachelor's and master's degrees in nutrition. And now I'm a registered dietitian who works with people with eating disorders, helping them recover or prevent. And I have a sub niche in working with performers.
Which I love because I think, and I haven't looked at any studies, but I would imagine that just as there is some sort of links between performing and theater and drug addiction, substance abuse disorders,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine there is a similar link or connection with eating disorders.
Yeah,
Any
definitely.
any statistics that support that?
Well, I'll give you what I know, but it's really hard to get statistics on eating disorders, period, no matter what the population, because they can really fly under the radar for a long, long time. You ask a average person, what does an eating disorder look like? They're going to say emaciated white teenage girl. That is such a significantly small percentage of people that have eating disorders. Most people that have an eating disorder are in a quote unquote normal body. Is not going to be on either end of the spectrum, can be any age, race, gender, body type. And there's a lot more eating disorders than anorexia and bulimia. There's a lot, we can go into that, but I would say what we see from sports statistics, because there is a lot on sports statistics, the aesthetic sports, dance, gymnastics, figure skating, things like that, extremely high prevalence of eating disorders amongst, like, I think all Division I NCAA college sports. It's like 25% of college females have some sort of eating disorder or disordered eating. My master's thesis was in college females and eating disorders, and about 50% of college females will have some sort of disordered eating behaviors, and a full 13% would meet the criteria for a diagnosable eating disorder. Yet only about a third of people that would qualify to be diagnosable actually will get diagnosed and have that conversation with their doctor or other provider. And then I remember, more specific to the theater community and dance, I believe it was Dance Magazine a couple years ago did a survey, and I think it was 1 out of 2 dancers suffered from disordered eating.
So, just to clarify for my own knowledge, is there a difference between an eating disorder and disordered eating?
Yes, and it's a blurry line, because I guess we could say the umbrella is disordered eating, and then the eating disorder is kind of under the umbrella. So any thoughts, behaviors around food, and I would add in exercise, that are harmful or would fit under the disordered category, which that's a very long list. And if you want, we can go into more of that. But anything that's disorder would be disordered eating. And then to have an eating disorder, it needs to meet clinical diagnostic definition that's in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. And that's something like a therapist or psychiatrist or a doctor is going to be diagnosing. So you have to meet very specific check boxes.
And you mentioned anorexia and bulimia, and to be honest with you, when I think of disordered eating, that's what comes to mind. But like you said, this is an umbrella of similar to autism. I'm very familiar with the DSM-5 because it came out right around the time my daughter was getting diagnosed. And there were some questions on whether she fell under that umbrella or not because the definition was changing.
Yes.
So I'm very familiar with that book, but I guess what are other
The other
lesser
ones.
known disorders that might fit under this umbrella.
Absolutely. So I'd say our big three that are very clearly defined: anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. So those are pretty cut and dry. You have it or you don't. And then there are a couple other ones that are much lesser known. So the most, I think it's the most common definable eating disorder is called other specified feeding and eating disorders. And it's a big catch-all. So you meet all but one of the diagnostic criteria for one of the other disorders, or things like orthorexia, which is obsession with clean eating, or healthy eating, which can be defined differently by different people. There's other ones that they're not like scientific terms, but we coin them, and like pregorexia, so people who are afraid of gaining weight during pregnancy. Drunkorexia, saving your calories from food to use on alcohol later, very dangerous. Diabulimia, which is type 1 diabetics misusing insulin in an attempt to lose weight, which is very deadly. It's probably the highest, I would assume. People who are doing that are really putting their lives at risk more than anything. There's also night eating syndrome and sleep-related eating disorder, which sound the same and are very minutely different. One of them, you are literally sleepwalking and eating. So you aren't aware until you wake up in the morning and you see wrappers or whatever. And, we hear horror stories of people who like actually were cooking in their sleep and didn't turn off the stove and burned down the house or something. A lot of times that goes along with like Ambien and things like that. Sleep-related eating disorder, I think, is waking up in the middle of the night to eat, even though you're not hungry. That one I'm not quite as familiar with. There's ARFID, which is Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. This goes along pretty commonly with autism, actually. It's one of the few eating disorders that doesn't have a requirement of a body image issue involved. So it's literally an aversion to certain foods, usually based on texture, temperature, fear of vomiting, that kind of stuff. And it usually is manifesting in children, oftentimes children on the spectrum. And it looks like extreme picky eating. And it's kind of when they don't phase out of it, that's when we're finding that. And there's more. There's a whole gamut of disorders, but those are kind of the main ones.
Well, and one that I had not heard of, and as I was researching, one that I saw in one of the visuals that you had on some website, and I don't remember what it was body dysmorphic disorder, which is
Yes.
something I had not heard of. But seemed like it might be something that could be prevalent in performance in theater. So could you talk about that?
Absolutely. So body dysmorphic disorder is not in and of itself an eating disorder. They often go hand in hand, but it can be its own thing. So that's where people are not seeing their body accurately. Like when they look in the mirror, usually they're seeing themselves as much larger than they actually are, but it could be anything that kind of makes them think of it like a funhouse mirror. So they could be like, my nose is ginormous, and really they have a perfectly normal nose, or there's something in the brain that's not letting them see themselves accurately. And that oftentimes does go along with an eating disorder, because there's a lot of body image, body shame that goes on in an eating disorder. And so they're seeing themselves like, very, very classic textbook thing would be someone with anorexia. So someone who does not eat enough, typically has very low weight, and they think themselves to be much larger than they actually are. When in reality, they're actually clinically underweight. So that would be like a simple definition of that.
I don't know where I saw this exercise, but one time I saw an exercise where they had like, it almost looked like cartoon figures, but basically drawings of people at different sizes. And the task was to pick what size you thought you were. And almost everybody who participated in this exercise picked a size larger than they actually were. So I found that very interesting, and I remember doing it myself. And having somebody say, no, you are not nearly that large or that big. But I was like, how strange is it that we kind of perceive that about ourselves? It's a lot of it is confidence and self perception and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. Not to discount disordered eating or
Yeah.
eating disorders, which are a very serious diagnosis, a very serious thing. So,
Yeah.
um,
But I think
but
that really goes to speak to society and how we've idealized a certain body type and how prevalent diet culture is. Like most people do see themselves as larger or needing to fix something.
and we've spent so much of our lives looking through magazines or media where people are
Mm-hmm.
airbrushed, or somebody just had a baby and you see them in a magazine and they look fabulous,
Yeah.
without knowing the context of what, how they got there. What I love about your approach, though, is your approach is really health at every size and intuitive eating. And I want to discuss for a minute the difference between intuitive eating versus diet culture.
Big topic. um, this is great. So I'm actually in the middle of my own podcast series on the principles of intuitive eating. So shameless plug, come over to my podcast, Permission to Eat, on any of the major podcast platforms. And I'm really breaking down what is intuitive eating. It's primarily based on the book by Evelyn Triboli and Elise Reich. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing the names right. Very popular, but it's really how humans eat and exist naturally. So the easiest way I can describe intuitive eating is you have an infant. An infant will let you know when they're hungry and will not shut up until they get fed. And as soon as they're done, and you're not going to get any more in them. And that is innate. No one is telling you, hey, baby, it's time for dinner. It's very a natural flow. It is primally in us. That being said, intuitive eating is not just about hunger and fullness. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, but basically it's listening to your body, trusting that your body knows what it's supposed to do with food, because it was literally created to know what to do with food. And gosh, the more I learn about science, the more in awe I am of the human body, because we put food in, our body breaks it down into small little molecules, puts them wherever they need to go to repair our body, make things happen. Our heart is beating, our lungs are breathing, our kidneys are processing urine, like doing all of this without thinking about it. So intuitive eating really supports that and really allows you permission to eat all foods. Which, other shameless plug, my book is Permission to Eat, so we'll talk about that too.
Yes, but we're going to talk about that.
So the opposite of that is diet culture. And we all, if you have not been living under a rock, if you are in first world country, probably third world countries at this point, you have heard about diets. You have probably been susceptible to one in some way, shape, or form, or maybe thousands of them. And it's really anything that, I actually have a really great way of saying this. I have a formula for how a diet works. And it's you pick a nutrient group to cut out. So lately, no one wants to eat carbohydrates. Hint, they're very necessary. So we're going low carb, and then we have a superfood, so like coconut oil or something. So we're going to promote that. And there's superfoods are just regular foods with great PR. So there's nothing magical about any of these superfoods. And then you get like a celebrity to endorse it or something. And so that's how a diet like gets out into the world. And then the way they work in the short term, by work I mean lose weight, is you're restricting yourself from foods that you love and probably getting into some caloric restriction. So you drop a few pounds, and then you get into what I call the binge restrict cycle. And that is, you are restricting, whether that is cutting out foods you love or true not eating enough calories, period, which leads to hunger and deprivation, because we are human and that is what we're meant to do. Our body wants to search for food. which leads to overeating or binging or doing bad, falling off the wagon. And that leads to feelings of guilt, shame, self-loathing, insert feeling word here. And that makes you want to do better, restrict harder, compensate, overexercise, try to, you were the one that was in the wrong when really the diet set you up to fail.
Absolutely. And there are so many diets. I mean, I was
And
kind
they
of
all work the
chuckling.
same.
Right. They all work the same. They all have different fancy names. Some of them are, I guess, better for you than others, but I kind of chuckle because literally every single time I go to the doctor, and I just had my annual physical a couple weeks ago, every single time, and I've been seeing the same doctor for 18 years, she tells me some new diet to try. And I always have to chuckle. I'm like, oh, that's what we're promoting this year. Last year it was this, now it's this. So,
Yeah. Well, because obviously that last one didn't work, or you didn't try hard enough, or
you have to find what works for you.
Oh my gosh. Don't get me
And
started.
it's funny you mentioned the low carb eating, because we got, everybody, I felt like there was this whole um, phase where it seemed like everybody I knew was on keto. Keto is the big thing. That was the big buzzword. And my husband and I decided to go on keto. And for us, and I know everybody's different, but for us, my cholesterol went way through the roof, and I found it very hard to sustain. So,
Yep.
I
That
said
makes
to my husband,
perfect sense that your cholesterol will go through the roof because it's this very high saturated fat diet. It's going to contribute to heart complications.
and it's very hard to do it correctly.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it makes me laugh so much about the keto diet, if we can stay on that for a second, because when we think about, so diabetes, when a diabetic person is trying their darndest to stay out of diabetic ketoacidosis, which is basically ketosis, right? Because if they get into ketosis and their body's producing ketone bodies, that's not good and you die. Now everyone is trying to do this, and not only is it, just generally not healthy. I'm not going to try to spend too much time on this, but if you were to get into ketosis for a long time, you would not be doing so hot. You might die. You would have pretty bad symptoms. The diet was developed for one very, very specific population of children with a certain type of epilepsy or seizure disorder. It's not designed to be a weight loss diet. And then most people are also not getting to ketosis, which is the whole point of it, because you would literally have to eat less than, I think it's 15 grams of carbs a day, which that's like a carrot. And I have people, like I did a video and blog post about debunking why the keto diet's a stupid idea, basically. So sorry if you guys are keto lovers out there, but this is my scientific take on it with 8 years of research. So I would get hate mail from people talking about why the keto diet worked. And, it's like a cult is how I describe it. But this one guy, I don't know why I was responding to these emails, but it was the first one that I got. And he was telling me that he eats vegetables on his keto diet. He eats broccoli every day and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you're not getting into ketosis if you're eating what you're telling me you're eating. And where are you getting this information? He's like, oh, I got it from Wikipedia. That's not where you get scientific information from. I'm sorry, go look at PubMed, talk to literal nutrition experts, dietitians. That's my little soapbox, so we can move on.
and there are a lot of people who love the keto diet. We're just,
Yep.
I think anytime you go on any kind of eating plan, it's probably good to check with a nutritionist or healthcare provider, so that you know if it's going to work for you, if it's realistic. it's really interesting to me. So you talked about the book a second ago, and I want to talk about the book because the book is Permission to Eat, and it really focuses on um, it's directed to a college or collegiate audience, and you've worked in the college setting, so you have that experience. Um, on my podcast and on this program, I've spoken to several actors who have said that in their BFA programs and their MFA programs, that they were either pitted against the other larger girl in the room because there was only room for one of those performers, or they were really pressured to lose weight and to fit a certain size. Um, do you think a lot of this link between the eating disorders and perhaps the performance space starts at that college level with those kinds of narratives?
I think that's where it starts to get really intense. So I've actually been doing a lot of research, talking to people in BFA programs about what messaging they're getting, what kind of training they're getting, what nutrition advice they're being given by unqualified people. And a lot of people have told me that they developed an eating disorder from their BFA experience, or and not everyone will, even if they have the same experience, because part of it is genetic, of course. But there was so much body shaming. There are programs that I hear about where to stay, in the theater dance program, we're I think it's regardless of your height for women, you have to be under 140 pounds or you get cut. So they are literally doing weigh-ins in the dance classes, I think in front of everyone too. So it's extremely shaming. A lot of the programs, the teachers, I'm not sure if it's kind of across the board with the teachers or if it's more just the dance teachers, but they're asking them to drop weight or, reduce their size for roles, or they're telling them that you're never going to make it in this industry because of how you look or your size, which is so dumb. It's soul crushing. And this is where, not only are these students paying you, so hopefully you'd be a little bit nicer just from that, but these are young minds that you're shaping, and you're crushing their spirit before they even get out there and have to deal with reality where, we get so much rejection, but we shouldn't be hearing that from the people that are supposed to be there to help us learn how to go at it better. So I think this is where it's, extremely prevalent. But then, on top of that, college age is, even without all of this influence from the theater programs, is just the perfect storm for an eating disorder to develop, because it's a major transition in life. It's stressful. You're living on your own for the first time in most cases, having to feed yourself, doing whatever your friends are doing. Yeah. A lot of kids don't know how to cook anymore, which I'm hearing. It's like, you don't know how to boil water. It's crazy. But then, influenced by your peers. So if everyone else is going on a diet or, whatever the thing is, skipping dinner, you're going to fall into it too. So it's coming at them from all angles. And I think these performing arts programs I can't speak to all of them, but in general are really putting this horrible messaging out there.
So how do we change that narrative? How do we change that mindset at the college level?
That's a great question. I have my ideas of how to kind of start organically with it. I'll talk about, but I think the bigger picture piece is we need to change the industry. And I do see slow movement with that. I do see that casting is getting more diverse in all areas. Obviously, there's a long way to go, but 10, 20 years ago, this wasn't even a topic of conversation. So it's got to start somewhere. I think on a collegiate level, we need to get appropriate information to the teachers. So teacher instruction, we need to make sure that the students are getting, if they are going to be getting health or nutrition information, it should be coming from a qualified professional, not from, no offense, the dance teachers. Like what we're, like we were saying, what works for one person does not work for everyone. And I think particularly in the dance community, I work a lot with dancers that have more experience with this, especially the instructors of a certain age, like they were really pushed to like, you need that balancing body, you need to do this. And they had to do it. So now you have to do it too, sort of mentality. And obviously, I'm stereotyping, not everyone's like this. I've had some really great dance teachers that don't do this, but I think we need to start with training the trainers, basically, like, don't say these things. We need to quit the weigh-ins. If people are really taking care of their body's going to naturally be a good weight for them, whatever that, it might not fit your mold, but they're going to be healthier. They're going to be happier. They're going to be able to jump higher. They're going to be able to do more things if they're not depriving their body. And as we just talked about with like that diet binge restrict cycle, if you push someone to restrict to lose weight, when that motivation goes away, when that role is over, when they get hungry enough, they're going to binge, and it's going to set them up for, whether it's a lifetime of disordered eating or weight cycling. And number one, like if their weight goes up, then do they get cut from the program, even though they made it in fall, they gain weight in spring and all of a sudden they're cut? Like, that's not right. And honestly, like on a more clinical level, weight cycling where you're, yo-yo dieting, going up and down weight, losing that same 10, 20 pounds over and over and over again is much more detrimental to your health and mortality than staying at a high weight for your entire life and not going up and down.
Well, and I think it's easy to go up and down. It's funny. Um, Once upon a time when I went to the doctor, I had changed doctors because for a very short time because we had changed insurance, and she had given me my ideal weight, and I burst out laughing because I was like, if I was ever at that weight, I would look very too skinny. I would
Right?
just look unhealthy. I would feel unhealthy. And so at one point in my life, I had lost a lot of weight. I was exercising regularly. I wasn't really watching my diet. I really was focused on exercise and movement and not restricting my eating. And I got down to 160 pounds. And I remember my doctor saying, I was so proud. That was my goal weight. That was the weight I wanted to be. And my doctor said, you still have about 10 or 20 pounds to lose to get to your ideal weight. And so I remember coming home. I was kind of devastated. I was like, here I feel like I've just moved a mountain,
Yeah.
and she's shaming me. And then I turned on my computer that day, and Tyra Banks had announced that she was 160 pounds. And I was like, well, there it is. I weigh as much as a squirrel. I'm fine.
I love that.
So that's where my mind went. That's how my crazy mind
Great.
works. But I think it's really important to be healthy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So and if only I could be that weight again, that would be lovely. But the older you get, the harder it gets. um, but there are, so one thing I do want to talk about, there's so much focus on labels, words, lexicons, how we describe ourselves, how we look at ourselves in the mirror. um, and as I was doing some research last night, I did find this quote from Lizzo where she talks about moving away from this idea of body positivity, because I was like, Libby and I are going to talk all about body positivity because I want to keep this positive, and I want to instill confidence in people who are watching in their bodies and their images. And and it's funny, when I looked up the term body positivity, there's a lot of backlash against that term, and the use of that term, and more of this push towards body norms, body normative. So, can you talk about this shift we might be seeing, and the words we use to describe body image?
Yeah. I think that's a really great discussion. So yeah, I've been noticing that shift too. So for the record, I love the term body positivity, but I think it's not realistic for everyone. So I think that's where the backlash is and where the education needs to be, because I think when this movement really got going recently, I mean, it's been, body positivity has been a lexicon for a while, but I feel like in the last 5-10 years has been the big push. And I think what happened was everyone was like, oh, just love your body. Just love it no matter what. It's perfect. And that was too much of a stretch for a lot of people. You can't go from self-loathing to unconditional love in a day. No matter how positive you want to be, no matter how optimistic of a person you are, that's a huge leap. So, like when I'm working with clients, we're working on, okay, you hate your body right now. What is like the next step up from that? Can you, like we're even just shooting for neutral, but can you respect your body? Like you don't have to love it, but respect what it does for you. Your legs carry you, your heart is beating and keeping you alive. Like all this stuff is happening and your body is allowing you to do that. Your body allows you to hug people, just having like finding those connections of what do you do, what do you love, how does your body assist you in that way, and just working on getting to neutral. Like, can we just respect our body, hopefully respect it enough to take care of it? And that comes from a whole host of things: nutrition, exercise, sleep, water, avoiding substance abuse, all the things. How can we take care of our body? And then slowly, like, are there instances that you love your body? Because the most body positive people do not love their bodies 24/7. I have bad body image days and I promote the heck out of self-love and body positivity. I have a generally good body image about myself, but I have days where I am not happy with how I look, where I think I'm fat, where, whatever. And anyone else could look at me and be like, what are you complaining about? Because I'm in a stereotypically normal to small body in normal human existence, not in theater. We'll get to that. But yeah, I think it's such a stretch. And what you're talking about, body normativity, well, we're not all meant to be Stepford wives. We're not all meant to fit this mold. We shouldn't all look like clones of each other, because number one, how boring is that? But we have it, by having a body, you have a normal body.
Yeah.
Like, let's just leave it at that. Like, you can just have your body, take ownership of your body, or respect your body, take care of your body, and appreciation and hopefully love can follow, but you're not going to start there.
No, and I think it's really interesting the relationship we have with our bodies. I posted a picture today. I had run a mini try several years ago, a sprint try. The Ramblin' Rose, for those of you who are local, it's a wonderful um, female only mini try, and it's a wonderful community of women who are just supporting each other. It's not really a race to the finish, it's more doing your personal best. It's a lovely community. And I had participated in this a few years ago, posted a picture today to share with people. And it was really interesting training for the triathlon. My whole elementary school life, I had been called Thunder Thighs. And so I have a very big, my husband will say, you have a hang up about your legs. I don't like people, like, I will cover them up. I don't want people touching them. I don't want people looking at them. I'm just like, it's the part of my body I don't like the most. And I remember training for the triathlon and crossing the finish line, which is the picture I posted today, and thinking to myself, well, these thunder thighs just crossed the finish line. That's how powerful they are. And it completely shifted my inner monologue on what my legs mean to me. So it's really interesting how your brain changes, I guess.
Yeah. I love that.
So, what are some of the signs if you are working in a theater environment, whether it's community theater, regional theater, professional theater? What are and you are a witness if you're a producer, a director, a casting person, and I'd like to think most people working in theater are responsible and empathetic and compassionate people. If you see someone who is struggling with disordered eating, what might be some of the signs?
Oh, there can be a lot of different ones. I would also, I'm going to preface this with there are really, well, we can talk about ways to talk to someone that you think has an eating disorder, but I would suggest. That's
the follow-up question to this.
Okay, I think I actually want to start with that, and then we'll get into that. So, kind of what to say. So, if you think someone is struggling with disordered eating, or I would even throw out there like any major life thing, if they're dealing with depression or substance abuse or whatever, it's going to be best received from someone they're close to. So if like let's say you're the director and you cast this person, you're working with them, but you're not like their best friend, you just met them. Probably not the person that should be bringing this up, because it could be received poorly. Or, if you're another cast member or whatever, you just met the person, like you want to, maybe bring it up to, if they have a close friend or a family member that you could talk to, be like, I'm worried about this person. Have you noticed these things? Can you talk to them? Have someone close to them bring it up. And then if you are that close person, ways to talk about it is to use I statements. So it's, I'm concerned, I'm worried, I'm fill in the blank, because I see that you are fill in the blank of, typically it would be more behavioral. So like I'm really concerned about you because I see that you're running to the bathroom after every meal and I've heard you throwing up. Do you want to talk about it? Start super low, because I'm not going to say most, a lot of people with eating disorders, if they're not at a place where they're ready to talk about it or receive treatment, are going to be very much in denial. So be like, oh no, you heard something else, or no, I totally eat, or whatever the thing is. And they're going to believe it's the truth too. There's something that happens with cognition as the brain shifts, particularly with restriction or just malnourishment. So they're actually believing what they're telling you, but it can be totally wrong. So come in super low balling it. Like, I'm just state the facts. I see this, I'm concerned about this, I'm really worried about these things. Do you want to talk? Can I help you find someone? Are you seeing a professional? And then see kind of where they want to take it from there. Even if that doesn't go anywhere that day, you've planted a seed, and maybe they'll pursue it in a week or a month. Maybe other people are saying the same thing and they're going to do something. Maybe that was the nudge they needed, or maybe they're already getting help and you just don't know it. So I would come in just as a friend, a listening ear. Don't tell them what to do. Don't say, oh, you should just eat this or eat like I do, or things like that. That can be really harmful, because if they could just eat normally, they would. That no one chooses an eating disorder. It's a mental health issue. So some behaviors that you might be seeing. So the nervosa part of some of these, anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, is Latin for nervousness. So usually anxiety is going along with these pretty highly. And particularly with any of the restrictive disorders, we see a high level of perfectionism. So hello, theater people. So you're probably going to see some anxiety, a lot of body anxiety. They might, even if they have a, quote unquote great body, like they might be like, oh, don't put me in that tiny little swimsuit on stage. There's, a lot of shame there. They want to cover up. And obviously all these things I'm saying are not necessarily what everyone's going to experience. There's whole lists of these things, but, when I think of how theater people interact, like if everyone goes out for dinner after rehearsal or something, and this person never goes with you, or they go and they never eat anything, it could be that they're saving money or that they've already eaten, but realistically, like if it's happening every time, there might be something going on there. If you notice major weight fluctuations up or down, that could be something. Not everyone's going to experience weight fluctuations, but if it's happening kind of rapidly, that would be a red flag for me. Having to eat very specific foods, so that might go along with the not eating out, like, oh, I can only eat the things that I packed because they're safe. Only, eating really specific in terms of like, oh, I only eat organic, or I only eat this way or that way. Not that those things are necessarily bad. Like, great, if you want to eat organic, more power to you. But if it becomes a hindrance where you can't live a normal life and it gets so rigid that you can't eat anything else, that's disordered. There are a lot of other red flags that we could go through, but I don't want to take up the whole podcast on that.
But those are some big red flags, big warning signs.
Mm-hmm.
We did a show about addiction, substance abuse disorders, and one of the things that performer said about his experience is the people who loved him the most and the most well-meaning people in his life were also the people who were enabling his addiction by giving him a couch to sleep on or loaning him money. Do you see that also with disordered eating?
Not necessarily. And I think it's there's a lot of parallels, of course, with substance abuse, but I think it's a little different. Like if you're giving someone a couch to sleep on, that's not going to fuel their eating disorder. I think if you're catering to all of their food needs, that could be enabling them, or if you're praising weight loss, that could be enabling. So on that note, like, just let's not talk about bodies anymore. Don't talk about your body. Don't talk about someone else's body. Like, let's just take comments in general, whether they're good or bad, because for a lot of people, if you were like, oh, you look so great, did you lose weight? They take that as, oh, well, you didn't think I looked good before. Was I too big before? Or, oh, if I keep losing weight, you're going to like me more. That it can really, what seems to be a very like theoretically nice comment can really be taken the wrong way and really fuel a disorder. So let's not talk about that stuff. But yeah, I don't really see the enabling piece, but there is a lot of crossover between eating disorders and addictions. So it oftentimes, whether they occur simultaneously or they flip-flop back and forth as one gets better, the other one gets worse, because eating disorders are used as a way of coping, a way to numb out, the way that someone would use drugs or alcohol. And it's not that food is addictive. The eating disorder is called a process addiction. So you're actually addicted to the behavioral piece of it. And whether you're eating too little or eating too much, it allows you to numb out and not have to deal with other things. So it could be someone who, previously alcoholic, got sober, has been really doing good with being sober, but they haven't addressed that underlying trauma. So they're turning to food behaviors.
Absolutely. Within the theater community, within the theater world, within the through the lens of a show, let's say, how can we, from casting a show, casting notices, the verbiage used in those casting notices, to fitting costumes, to headshots, and everything that's involved in this industry. What are some of the things we're not quite getting right that you would like to see shift? We talked about before we went on air that you're a normal size in the real world, but in the theater world you're not, and so that's crazy to me. So I guess, where do we have to kind of hopefully shift
Yeah.
shift the dialogue on that.
Oh gosh. I feel like I would have more to say about this if I had spent more time behind the table. I've only directed one show, so I can't, and that was community theater, so I can't speak too much to what it's looking like on the casting side, which is where I think the major thing is. And I'll be completely transparent. I have like my own back and forth with this in my head because, like when we're casting revivals or something that's always been done a certain way, you kind of like as a audience member, you expect characters to like have the same hair color and, you're expecting them to have the same vocal range. You're expecting them to kind of look the same. You expect the costumes to kind of look the same. Like I even think of a chorus line. I did that in community theater. And dang it, if they didn't have the costumes nailed down to the original Broadway production, I was thinking like, oh, we're just going to wear leotards. Like, no, it was very, very specific. And it's because these roles become so iconic. So, thank you, Judy. Thank you for saying nothing is just community theater in the comments there. I appreciate that. Yes, I'm a performer. So from an audience and like standard perspective, like I can understand why we don't want to see things change a lot. However, things that I think need to be changing is how are we looking at these shows where body type is not a necessity for the role, right? There's so many things out there. I know there's like someone's Instagram handles more than Tracy T, more than Tracy Turnblad, like there's got to be more roles for the, and I say this from people calling themselves this more for the fat people, right? If a role does not specify a body type, a race, whatever, ability, as long as the person is right for the role, that's how we should be casting it. Like, do they have the right acting chops, vocal ability? Can they do the dance moves that are required? And depending on the show, are some of those alterable even? If someone's in a wheelchair, like we saw in Oklahoma, was it 2018, 2019? I can't remember the name of the role or the actress, but yes, right? Like, and she got a Tony for that. Why aren't we rethinking things? Or did she get a Tony?
Yes.
Yes.
She killed it. She
right?
is so, I saw that production. I did not love that production. However, she was fabulous. And after about the first 6 seconds, you forgot she was in a wheelchair because she just did a marvelous job.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And I also want to throw this in there so I don't forget. And I feel like we've been talking a lot about body shaming in people in larger bodies, being shamed into smaller bodies, but it goes the other way too. Like there are people who are naturally thin. They're like, you need to put on weight. You need to do this. We need to put padding on you, whatever. So it goes both ways. So just don't body shame. But,
men as well as women.
Oh, yes.
I think that for everybody, it's not just women.
Yeah, there's been some great conversations around like particularly romantic leads in shows. Like why are they always, I think as one person put it, like these snatched bodies? Why are they always like so gorgeous, chiseled men and these, petite little soprano women? And this is me saying from a normal size body as a soprano, like I want these roles, but like it needs to be open. It really, because it's showing what it's telling people is that people in different body types, colors, whatever, are not worthy of love. And their story is just as valid and is totally true in real life. So why are we casting this way?
And we have to get out of that Tracy Turnblad narrative, like you said. One of the most fun shows I've seen on Broadway in recent years is Head Over Heels. And one of the things that was so delightful about that show was Bonnie Milligan's performance. She was brilliant.
Yes.
She played the beautiful princess. And there was never any question as to her size in the show. It was just given. She was the beautiful princess.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until Ben Brantley wrote the review of the show and pointed out her size that it became even a topic of conversation.
Oh, I didn't even hear about that. So I was actually, I had the privilege of seeing that opening night in Oakland where they did their off-Broadway trial.
Mm,
Oh, she was so good. Like the whole cast was phenomenal. I'm glad that show made it to Broadway for a short time.
me too. And it's funny. I had interviewed Mixed Thief, Ashley Latimer, who did the social media branding for the Lightning Thief musical. And she said one of the things she loved about Head Over Heels is she finally saw a princess where she could borrow the princess's dress. And I was
Hmm.
like, yes, that's what it is. That's representation does matter.
Yep.
And we don't have to keep telling the fat narrative over and over again.
Yeah.
Um, I want to go back to the book for a second. So the book was written kind of for that college audience. Can someone overcome an eating disorder or disordered eating on their own? Or is it something that they really do need professional help in a diagnosis?
You don't need a diagnosis. So I feel like that part is false unless the only reason you really need a diagnosis is if you're billing insurance. So if you want insurance to pay for treatment, you're probably going to get a diagnosis because that's how it's going to get covered. At least that's how it is. I take a couple forms of insurance. It's a pain in the butt, but you need specific diagnoses in order to get reimbursement. So there's that. But regardless, other than that, you don't need a diagnosis. Your eating disorder or disorder eating is totally valid, even if you do not get a diagnosis. If you are struggling with food, with body image, with behaviors, with things that are interfering with your quality of life, if you're thinking about food all day long, you deserve to get better and you deserve to get help. So I will say it is rare that people will fully recover on their own. It's not impossible. It depends on the person. I think the shorter amount of time that you've experienced an eating disorder and the more you can fully throw yourself into recovery on your own, whether it's, reading books and, doing self-help and things like that, and, really just taking action. For some people, it is possible. 95 or more percent, I would say, need to be seeing professionals. And that initial treatment team is typically going to be composed of a registered dietitian, a therapist, and a medical provider, ideally all that are well-versed in eating disorders. Medical providers are pretty hard to find still, but you want your therapist and dietitian to be eating disorder experts. You'll probably be seeing them pretty regularly. And then depending on how severe the disorder is, you might be in higher levels of care where, potentially residential programs or things like that, where you're spending more intensive time working on getting healthy so that you can live the rest of your life.
Yeah. And I would almost add, you don't only deserve to get better or feel better, you deserve to live.
Yes.
You deserve to live. I heard somebody say that yesterday, and I was like, yes, that's what it is.
Yeah. We're not just surviving, we're thriving.
Yes. So a lot of your work is preventative and shifting the mindset into healthy bodies at any size. Um, Tell me specifically about the work you do with performers, the courses, the online community that you have, the resources.
Yeah. Well, a resource I really want to share, it's not mine, but I do work with them, is the Broadway Body Positivity Project. So the founder, Stephanie Lexis, she's incredible. There's a free Facebook discussion group that you can join if you just want to be surrounded by body positive theater people who are having these difficult discussions. So I highly recommend that. The work that I do with theater people is it can be either my one-on-one clients, so just like any of my eating disorder clients, some of them are performers, and that I treat everyone pretty much the same, but I have that understanding of what it's like to be in casting, be in costume fittings, be in a show, be in the theater world, and that lifestyle. Oh, thanks for sharing that link. So I can really speak to what people are going through in theater and in the film world, because I do that a bit as well. And I have a client who's a model right now. So I'm working on helping people take care of their relationship with food and their body. And this is going to put some people off, but this is how it is. Like, I don't help you lose weight. If you naturally lose weight through changing behaviors because that's what your body needed to do, that's what happens. We don't set goal weights. I don't weigh you. We are working on what are the healthiest behaviors for you. How can you take better care of your body through food, exercise, and everything. I take it on as a very full body approach. I was also a personal trainer previously, so I speak a lot to the exercise piece. But for performers who don't want to work with me one-on-one, I have an online course called Whole Health for Performers. And I call it the health class that you never got in school. And it's directed to stage performers. So we kind of skip over all the basics of like, here's what a carb is and a fat and a protein. And we go straight into how do you need to be eating for long rehearsal days? How are you avoiding digestive issues on stage? Let's talk about substance abuse. Let's talk about mental health in the theater and resources, exercise and cross training. So you're taking good care of your body, rest days, vocal health, hydration tips. And there's some fun stories of health hazards that I've experienced on stage, like heat stroke and how to avoid that. So that class is a self-paced online course. It's available on my website. It's actually a pretty good price right now. I'm not going to say in case it changes at some point, but go check that out. And then can't say too much about this yet, but I am working with some colleges to hopefully get this curriculum into BFA programs as well. So if you're listening to this in the future and you are working with a BFA program, or you would really like to have a health class for performers that is body inclusive, health at every size inclusive, and really is going to teach people how to take care of themselves and not just lose weight for a role, then please talk to me, because I really want to get this into the hands of as many people as I can.
I love that. And we have so many colleges right here in the Raleigh-Durham area. NC State, UNC, Duke are the big ones, but then there are several small ones that have theater programs. And so I will help get the word out over here because I think it's so important. It's the stuff you don't learn that you need to know.
I'd also like to add real quick, I have a survey out right now for performers asking about, what you've been hearing in the theater or in your college programs, what you would like to learn about in health classes. So you can help me mold this program as I develop it. That link is on my Facebook page, or you can DM me and I'll send it to you. And I'd love if you take the survey. It's anonymous. You do not even have to give me your email or name or anything unless you want to. But I'm just trying to get info so that I can make this the best course possible.
And your handle on Facebook and social media, where can people find you or find the
Yes. So both Facebook and Instagram is at Not Your Average Nutritionist. And I have another Instagram that's my acting page. It's called The Broadway Dietitian. I don't put as much health stuff on that one, but because we're theater people, I'll throw that out there. And my website is notyouraveragenutritionist.com, which I see you have up on the screen.
I love that. So if somebody is watching this live or in the future, and they've spent the last hour with us, what do you want the one takeaway for them to be if they're walking away from this podcast? What's the takeaway?
You are enough just as you are. And if you are at all struggling, you deserve to seek help. You don't have to get sicker to receive help. And also, if you're listening and you are struggling and you're not sure what that first step is, you're not sure how to find someone, reach out to me. I will help connect you with providers in your area, figure out who, help you make those first steps. If you're just like, I have no idea, but I know I want to get help, I'm here for you.
I love that. I'm so happy to have made this connection. I can't say enough about Broadway Makers Alliance. It's such a supportive, wonderful group, but I am so glad to have spent this hour getting to know you better and chatting with you about this, because it's really an important topic, and I feel like it's something maybe we will revisit again because
I would love that.
I would love that too. So, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Judy, for watching. I know you were out there because you made a comment. And if you tuned in late and you want to catch this from the beginning, it will be on Facebook immediately once we go off the air. It'll be on the YouTube channel as well. And it will be on the website in a couple of days. So, thank you so much. Let me take care. Stay safe. Stay healthy. and
You too.
and good luck putting your daughter in dance class. That's very exciting. We talked
Thank
about the
you.
dance class, and everyone just take care. And I will see you possibly tomorrow, but probably next week. I don't know. There might be something happening tomorrow, so just keep watching the Facebook page. Thank you, Libby.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening.